She smiled when she saw the box. Her fingers brushed it lightly on the napkin where I'd left it, like it might vanish if she moved too fast. She didn't even look at me, just stared at it like it was glowing. I watched her. Every blink, every breath, every micro-expression she didn't realize she was showing. I watched her fall in love with a moment she hadn't earned. Her lips parted. Is this? I nodded once. Not because I was proposing, but because I wanted her to open it. She did. Her smile cracked first. Then her hands dropped. The silence wasn't loud, not like in movies. It was vacuumed. The air got sucked out of the room, like even the oxygen didn't want to be part of what came next. Inside the box wasn't a ring. It was her ring. The one she took off 4 nights ago. The one she left on that hotel bathroom sink while she tangled herself into someone else's arms. I knew because I was there the next morning, before housekeeping, before checkout, before lies had a chance to reassemble themselves. I want you to give this back to whoever you become after tonight, I said quietly. She didn't answer. Not right away. She blinked too many times, like she could blink out of it. Like she could shatter time and wake up earlier that morning where she thought I didn't know. Where I was still stupid. Where I still made her coffee and folded her towels and looked at her like I couldn't believe she chose me. That guy was gone. The bartender came over. Y'all okay? I turned to him and handed him a folded note. Give this to her when she comes back with him next time. The bartender gave me a strange look. She opened her mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to lie, maybe just to say please. But I was already walking out the door. And behind me, her reaction started to explode. I didn't go home after that. I didn't have a plan. I just drove. I took the long road past the cemetery, past the lake where we used to fake sunsets with filters and pretend we were happier than we were. The sky was the same orange it always was this time of year, but it felt artificial now. Like someone else had painted it, and I wasn't invited to the gallery. I parked in an empty grocery store lot and stared at nothing for almost 20 minutes. No music, no calls, just the sound of my own breathing and the rustling plastic bag in the back seat from a forgotten errand I never finished. I kept thinking about the way she looked at the ring box, like it was the beginning of her next chapter. Like she thought this was her romantic movie climax, the part where everything makes sense. She looked relieved, like I was finally catching up to her script. She didn't know I'd already read the ending. That note I gave the bartender? It wasn't some dramatic message for her. It wasn't closure. It wasn't a quote or a guilt trip. It was a name. Just one. Written in sharp, clean letters. A name that doesn't mean anything to anyone but her. A name that ties her to something bigger. Something she thought I'd never find out. The bartender probably wouldn't understand. Maybe he'd hand it to her next week. Maybe he'd forget. Maybe she'd never come back with him. But if she did, if she dared to play house again in the same booth where she first decided I was disposable, that name would shatter everything she'd built. Because that name wasn't his. It was hers. Her real one. Not the one she used with me. Not the one on our marriage license. But the one buried in a database I had to dig for 3 weeks to find. The one that came with an old driver's license from a state she swore she'd never even visited. The one tied to a debt she claimed she didn't have. And an ex-husband she said was dead. But I'd spoken to him. I'd heard his voice. He told me everything. And now, I'm not sure if she's who I married, or just a character she wore like perfume. All I know is that she's been lying longer than I've known her. And the truth? It's uglier than cheating. Much uglier. The man who answered the phone sounded like he'd been waiting for my call his whole life, even if he didn't know it yet. His name was Peter, 42. He ran a used car lot in Michigan. I found him through an old property record tied to the name Emma thought she'd buried. The address was abandoned, but the paper trail wasn't. At first, I wasn't even sure what to say. I thought maybe I'd back out. Tell him it was a wrong number. Pretend I was selling insurance. Anything to not rip the lid off what was clearly a sealed wound. But instead, I said the line I'd rehearsed in my head too many times. Did you used to know a woman named Meredith Calloway? Silence. Then he asked slowly, who is this? Her husband. Another pause. This one felt colder. Which one? That's when I knew. He didn't say ex. He didn't say used to be. He said which one. Like he wasn't just confirming a shared past. He was confirming we were parallel timelines, and neither of us knew who was real. We talked for an hour. Peter met her 8 years ago. She went by Meredith then. Said she was running from a stalker. She didn't like cameras, avoided social media, never used her real last name. She made him move cities. Twice. Said it was for safety. Said trusting her meant keeping secrets. He married her after 11 months. They eloped. No family. No friends. Just Vegas lights and a fake bouquet. He never divorced her. And she never told him she'd moved on. By the time she met me, she was already married. To him. And maybe more. That night, I pulled out our wedding photo. We looked so happy. She wore this silver chain around her neck. A small, almost invisible charm I'd never really noticed before. I zoomed in on it. The charm said M. She told me it stood for Mom, because hers had passed away before we met. That it was sentimental. I never questioned it. Now I know it didn't mean Mom. It meant Meredith. So who the hell did I marry? Was Emma even her real name? Was I husband number 2 or number 5? Was I just a smokescreen while she built another life under another lie? My head hurt. My hands were shaking. And in the middle of all this confusion, one awful thought wormed its way into my skull. What if I was never meant to find out? What if she let me see the toothpick? What if the ring box, the note, the bar, all of it, was exactly what she wanted me to do? And if that's true, then I just walked straight into her trap. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her side of the closet. The way her shoes were arranged, precise, almost surgical, labels on the inside of her coats, color-coded hangers. I'd always thought it meant she was organized, but now it felt less like tidiness and more like someone who needed full control of every inch of her life, including mine. She came home around 11:15 p.m., a full 2 hours later than she said she would. No explanation, no apology, just a soft kiss on my temple and a whisper, "You're still up?" I didn't respond, just smiled and nodded, like the idiot I was still trying to unbecome. She went to the bathroom. The lock clicked. The water ran. While she was in there, I opened her laptop. I wasn't proud of it, but pride left the building the moment I found out I might be one of several husbands orbiting her lies like planets around a black star. The laptop booted without a password. That alone felt like a trap, like she wanted me to look. Nothing was there. No recent documents. No emails. No bookmarks. Just a clean desktop wallpaper and a sticky note with a grocery list that didn't match anything we actually had in the fridge. Milk, cucumbers, lavender. She hates cucumbers. But then I checked the file directory. Deep in the system folder, buried behind a bunch of old firmware logs, was a compressed zip folder titled April Rain 32. It was encrypted, and I couldn't crack it. I put the laptop back before she came out. She smiled at me again, crawled into bed, and fell asleep in minutes. I lay next to her for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening to her soft breathing and wondering if any of it was real, or just muscle memory she'd perfected across multiple lives. The next morning, while she was out getting brunch with a coworker, I did something I hadn't done since we bought the house. I went into the crawl space. It was dusty, cramped, and smelled like stale air and pine boards. But near the back, behind a half-broken dresser she said belonged to her grandmother, I found a plastic bin wrapped in a shower curtain. Inside was a cardboard shoebox. And inside that, IDs. Not just hers. 10 of them. All with different names, hair colors, cities. Some had her photo, altered with different glasses, wigs, makeup. Others looked like entirely different people, but there was always something off. Like they all shared a single expression that didn't belong to any of them. Calm. Cold. Watchful. There were also keys. 8 different ones. Each labeled with a single letter. A bundle of receipts from cities she said she never visited. And a folded map with small red X's across 3 states. I didn't realize I was crying until a drop hit the map. My wife didn't just lie. She lived as someone else. Multiple someone else's. Enough that she had to organize them in plastic bins and lock their memories in her crawl space like corpses she didn't want to bury. Suddenly, I heard a noise from upstairs. The front door opening. Footsteps. She was home. Early. And I was still holding the box. I froze, still clutching the box like it might explode if I breathed wrong. My mind was moving too fast to form a plan, but my body acted on its own. I slid the box back into the bin, shoved it behind the old dresser, pulled the curtain over it, and scurried to the far corner of the crawl space just as the attic hatch creaked open. But it wasn't the front door she came in through. It was the attic. She knocked first. Who knocks before entering their own attic? She didn't call my name. Didn't ask if I was up there. Just one quiet knock. Then the soft groan of the ladder unfolding. I curled behind a stack of insulation, barely breathing, my heart pounding like it was trying to escape my ribs. She climbed slowly, step by step, her boots making the wood moan under her weight. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't curious. She moved like someone checking inventory, like she already knew what she was looking for. When she reached the top, she paused. I could hear her shifting something, maybe the old lamp we kept near the hatch. Then silence. For a long time. Too long. And then, Gordon, my stomach dropped. She didn't sound surprised. She sounded amused, like she was testing something. I thought I heard you come up here yesterday, she continued casually. I was just wondering. I didn't answer. My entire body was vibrating with adrenaline. I thought about making a run for it, rushing past her down the ladder and out the door like some low-budget horror movie escape. But something about her voice pinned me in place. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning dressed as curiosity. She stepped further in. I could hear her shifting through boxes now, not in a clumsy or panicked way, but with that same calculated slowness, like she knew where everything was and just wanted to confirm whether anything had moved. And then she stopped, right in front of the bin. She didn't open it, didn't touch it. She just stood there for a moment, and then said something I'll never forget. You never asked where I was on April 3rd. It came out soft, almost like she was telling me a bedtime story. My brain latched onto the date like it meant something obvious. It didn't. Not immediately. But something about the way she said it told me I should know. That I'd missed something critical. A moment later, she turned and climbed down the ladder, slow and quiet. Like a ghost going back to bed. I didn't move until the sun started leaking through the roof cracks. When I finally emerged, the house was silent again. She was gone. No note. No texts. Nothing. Just her coffee cup in the sink and a faint scent of her perfume lingering in the hall like a fingerprint on glass. I looked up, April 3rd, while my hands still shook. Nothing popped up at first. But then, on an old local crime blog I'd barely remembered subscribing to, I found it. April 3rd, the night a woman named Vanessa Cole went missing from a bar 2 towns over. No footage. No witnesses. Just an abandoned phone, a half-eaten burger, and a credit card receipt for 2 drinks, signed under the name Meredith Calloway. I felt the room tilt under me. My knees gave out. Because that wasn't just her name. That was the same alias I found on the ID in the crawl space. The one tied to Peter, the other husband. Except, now there was a third woman. And I was starting to think only one of them ever really existed. I didn't leave the house for 3 days after that. I couldn't. Every time I looked out the window, I thought I saw her. Not Emma. Not Meredith. Not even Vanessa. But some version of her, built out of shadows and perfume, watching me to see how much I knew and whether I'd say anything stupid. I unplugged the smart speakers, turned off the Wi-Fi, taped over the webcam on my laptop. I know how that sounds, believe me. But paranoia doesn't feel crazy when you're living inside someone else's script, someone who's already 3 pages ahead, erasing your lines before you get to read them. I didn't sleep much. And when I did, I dreamed of attics and crawl spaces and women with other people's faces. Every night, I'd wake up to the sound of the house breathing, the creaks in the floorboards, the hum of old pipes, the soft click of our bedroom door, even though I knew I'd locked it. And then, on the 3rd morning, someone knocked on the front door. I nearly jumped out of my skin. It wasn't a delivery. We hadn't ordered anything. It wasn't a neighbor. No one knocks in this neighborhood. They text first. Always. I waited. Another knock. I didn't move. I peeked through the side window, slowly, barely parting the blinds. And there, standing on my porch, was a man I had never seen before in my life. Late 40s. Tan jacket. Clean-shaven. Average. Nothing memorable about him, which made it worse. He looked like the kind of man who'd never leave fingerprints. He knocked again. Louder. Then he said, "Mr. Fenton?" I didn't answer. My last name isn't Fenton. At least, I don't think it is. But he didn't hesitate. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. Held it up to the window like he knew I was there. "I was told to give this directly to you. No one else." He placed the envelope on the doormat, nodded once, and walked back to his car, a silver sedan with no plates. I watched it disappear down the street, every hair on my body buzzing. I waited 10 minutes before I cracked the door and took the envelope. No name on the outside. No return address. Inside, a single photo. It was grainy, black and white, probably from a security cam. It showed Emma, or whoever she really was, sitting in a diner booth across from another man. Not Peter. Not the bald guy from the barbecue place. Someone new. Younger. Maybe early 30s. And she wasn't smiling. She was holding a knife. Not threatening. Just holding it. Casual. Like she was talking and cleaning her nails with it mid-conversation. Scrawled on the back of the photo in looping blue ink were 4 words. She's done this before. I dropped the photo. My legs nearly gave out again. And then, as I stood there frozen in my own hallway, a text buzzed on my phone. Unknown number. No name. No contact history. It said, "You need to disappear before she decides you already have." I didn't call the police. I don't even know why. Maybe because I knew how that conversation would go. "Hi. I think my wife has multiple identities and may be connected to a missing persons case, and a stranger with no license plate just left me a photo of her holding a knife." They'd nod, take a few notes, and forget I ever called. Meanwhile, she'd find out I'd talked. And then what? She'd smile, make tea, and slowly erase me too. No, I needed something real. Something I could prove to myself before I tried proving it to anyone else. So I went back to the crawl space. The box was still there, undisturbed. But this time, I noticed something I'd missed the first time. At the bottom, beneath the IDs, the receipts, and the map, there was a flash drive, sealed in a plastic bag, wedged under a flap of the box like it was never meant to be found. I took it to an old laptop, one I hadn't used in years, with no Wi-Fi and no connected accounts. If this thing had a virus, I wasn't giving it access to anything important. There were 3 video files on it, each about 20 minutes long. No titles, just timestamps. I opened the first. It was security camera footage, silent, grainy, fixed angle, showing a motel hallway. I recognized the carpet. Same place Emma had once said she'd stayed during a wellness retreat 2 years ago. Except in the video, she wasn't retreating. She was arguing. With a man. Same height as me. Maybe older. He looked scared. She didn't. She was calm. Calculated. She stood perfectly still while he paced, yelled, gestured wildly. And then, without warning, she stepped forward and whispered something in his ear. He froze. Like a statue. And then, without her touching him, he turned, walked back into the motel room, and closed the door. She waited a moment. Then calmly turned to the camera and smiled. Not sweetly. Not seductively. Knowingly. Like she knew someone would be watching this one day. I played the second video. Another motel. Another hallway. Different man. Same ending. But the third one was different. No motel this time. Just a shaky handheld recording. Someone filming from behind a car window. The camera zoomed in on Emma, or whatever her name really was, walking with a man into a cabin deep in the woods. The timestamp was only 4 months old. Neither of them ever came out on film. But in the final 30 seconds, the camera shifts suddenly, as if the person filming was startled. A thud, then silence. And at the very end of the footage, just before the file cut off, there she was again, walking directly toward the camera. Eyes locked. Expression unreadable. Like she was coming to collect whoever was watching. I slammed the laptop shut. That night, I called Peter, the other husband, again. He didn't pick up. So I dug deeper. Found a forum where he used to post reviews about small-town diners. His last post was 6 weeks ago. It ended with a photo of a blueberry pie. And the words. She said it was her favorite. I hope it's not my last. He hadn't logged in since. I found 3 other names tied to the aliases in the crawl space box. None of them responded. One of them, a woman named Allie Monroe, had been declared missing in Nevada 2 years ago. The police report listed her emergency contact as M. Calloway. That was when I realized the obvious thing I'd been ignoring. The name she used with me, Emma, wasn't just fake. It wasn't her alias. It was mine. A cover. A decoy. A disposable script she could write me into and erase me from. And I was starting to think she'd already started on the erasing part. I left that night. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't write a letter. I didn't even lock the door behind me. I just walked away from the house, the woman I never really knew, the life I had been scripted into like a background character in her twisted narrative. For 3 days, I stayed in a motel with peeling wallpaper and a broken vending machine. The kind of place she would never think to look because it was beneath her, too ordinary, too bland, too real. I stared at the ceiling for hours, thinking about everything she'd taken from me. But slowly, I also started to think about what she hadn't. She hadn't taken my ability to feel, to trust, to hope. She hadn't taken the version of me who once believed in love so deeply that I'd fold a note into a ring box and wait for the truth to catch fire. She hadn't taken me, and that realization changed everything. I contacted a friend, someone I hadn't spoken to since college. A quiet guy named Leo who worked in private cyber investigations. I sent him everything. The videos, the IDs, the photos. I didn't want revenge. I wanted documentation. I wanted someone outside my fear to confirm that I wasn't insane. He didn't call. He just sent me an email 3 days later with the subject line. Got her. He had traced one of her aliases, the one tied to the cabin in the woods, to a luxury apartment in another state. And more importantly, he'd found bank records, multiple accounts, opened under shell names, slowly funneling money from at least 6 men over the last 5 years. None of them knew about each other. None of them had seen her real face. But Leo had one more thing. A police file. Unsolved case. A woman matching her description, real name unknown, involved in witness protection over a decade ago. Details redacted. But the photo? It was her. Younger, sharper. Still watching. Still calculating. And yet, no active warrant. No official charge. Just silence. A ghost in the system. That's when I decided I was done chasing ghosts. I changed my number. Legally changed my name. Took the last bit of money I had and bought a one-way ticket to the kind of town where people wave at strangers and no one asks where you're from unless you volunteer it. And for the first time in years, I started breathing again. I picked up painting. Not because I was good at it. I'm awful, actually, but because it reminded me that not everything needs to be perfect or planned or preserved in silence. Some things are just messy and honest and for you. I met someone. Her name is Claire. She teaches 2nd grade and thinks I'm hilarious, which is strange because I've never thought of myself as funny. She doesn't ask questions I'm not ready to answer. She just listens, and exists, and smiles like the world is still worth loving. One evening, I told her everything. The whole story. She didn't run. She didn't call me paranoid. She just held my hand and said, "You didn't survive her. You escaped her. There's a difference." Sometimes, I still look over my shoulder. I probably always will. But now, when I do, I don't see her anymore. I see me, the man I had to become to survive her. And for once that's enough.